Hello, everyone. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. You sure really? Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. Yes, had the channel page open as well. That's it. Okay. How are you, my friends? All of you. Welcome one and welcome all. We have here Woody Black, and we have CCG. Hello, and DJ Mark and the Crafty Niners Tinfoil Hat News. I have just been talking to Crafties on their channel. They did a live stream and a quiz, which I wasn't very good at this time. Hello, license applied for Nottingham. How'd you do? That's a good name. And we've got DJ B2, who was our winner, I believe, this week. And less nihilistic Mark. The less nihilistic Mark. Oh, I don't believe that for a second. Talking about black-eyed children. And we've got, who else we got up here? We've got Luke Griffin. Hello, Luke. How you doing? And we've got Johnny Fettler. Hi, Johnny. Johnny was over there as well with Liz. Thanks for sending these people over to us, Liz. Sorry I had to leave before the end. We've got Woody Black as well. I know these people because they were over there. We've got Hatchie. And we've got Bernie Tucker, who says, good evening. All thanks for all the great videos, Ben. Your hard work is appreciated. Many thanks. You're welcome. And Della Farrand. Hey, Della. How you doing? I don't know if all these people are still here, but welcome. Hello, Della. Oh, Della is. Hi, Della. How you doing? West London is reminding me about the rugby. 16 England, 14 Wales. Yeah, I know. I actually know the result already. West Londoner. Yeah. I was crying into my beer. But it was a bloody exciting match. It really was. Thrilling. Absolutely thrilling. Very close. Very, very close game. Yeah. Really, I was on the edge of my seat. Sorry it didn't go our way, but surely if you're English, of course, it did go your way. But bloody hell, that was very entertaining. Really great rugby. Really fantastic. I mean, the Six Nations has really gone off to quite a start. Stuart, hello. My wife is Ukrainian, so Putin is not popular in our house. Oh, right. Stuart, you may not want her to watch this because... And we got Marie, Papa Langioli, whose name is Marie. Hello. Hello, Marie. How you doing? Yeah, she may not like this one, Stuart. Oh, Rhiannon, hello, welcome. How are you? Yes, DJ B2 is the quiz master tonight. Yes, I've won twice. I got these prizes. I don't know where they are now. I think they're on my shelf somewhere. But I have got some prizes. I won 2 prizes in the quiz. One is a conspiracy theorists puzzle book, and the other one was a list of paranormal phenomena. It's really, really interesting stuff. And yeah, but I didn't win this time. I didn't. Hello, Nihilist Lives Matter. How do you do? I haven't watched the interview yet, but Hillary is fuming. Oh, it must be good. I'll tell you what, I haven't either. We're going to watch it together. Now, somebody actually wrote to me and advised me to watch it first. They said, "Oh, I've seen it." It's someone in chat actually. They can own up if they want. They said, "Ben, you got to watch it first. You got to see it first before you do the live stream." And I was going to, but then the rugby came along and other things got in the way, and I fell asleep. So I actually, you know what? I haven't watched it yet. We're going to watch it together. Well, you've probably seen it, but I haven't. So I'm going to be watching it for the first time. So it's more you sort of watching my reaction, I think, because some of you I know have already seen it. And I mean, I would appreciate not too many spoilers, although I do accept that President Putin didn't actually come clean on the aliens, did he? I think if he'd come clean on the aliens and the UFOs, I think we'd have heard about it by now. So I accept that I haven't actually. I accept that that's actually not going to happen. Yeah. But anyway, welcome to Della Farrand. Oh, Della Farrand's here. Yeah, but Della hasn't seen it either. Green Tea, welcome. Green Tea was over in Liz as well. Stuart says his wife is laughing. She says he's an arsehole. All right. She'll be saying the same about me in a minute, I expect. Hello, Nigel Phillips. How do you do? And hello, Pioneer Spirit. Pride and Dignity, Brother Porter. How do you do? By the way, the gas spanner is on tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Sunday night is spanner night. Don't forget that. I'm doing something almost every night, aren't I? But anyway, I should start doing these things here. Yeah. All right. Who's that? Who's died already? All right. Oh, too busy posting humour. Yes. Oh, right. Well, there's always rumours that Putin's ill and things like that and stuff like that. Hello, body technician. How do you do? I'm glad Hillary. It must be good if Hillary's fuming. It must be. Anyway, oh, Putin, right. Well, there's always rumours that he's been replaced by an actor, and people have said that about several people. But yeah, Tony says Putin is so well spoken and intelligent, it makes Biden looks like an even bigger fool. I think possibly, anyone would make Biden look like a fool. I mean, the thing about it is, it's not really saying much, is it? I mean, you must realise that slow horses look fast when they're walking past dead donkeys. But I must say beforehand, I'll say going into this beforehand, I do. President Vladimir Putin is actually one of the few statesmen in the world I feel any sense of respect for. I'm not saying he's on our side. I'm not saying he's a David Icke and he's against the New World Order. I see him as a Russian nationalist, essentially. But what he has done for his country, when you compare what, for example, Rishi Sunak has done for Britain and Leo Varadkar has done for Ireland, and Biden, or whoever's pulling Biden's strings or holding him up so he doesn't fall over, what they've done for the United States. If you compare that to Putin, you see yeah, a green tea says yes. An omelette looks intelligent next to Biden. Exactly. Della says Putin is sexy, I must admit it. Yeah. Well, the thing is, do you remember he's riding bareback and shirtless on a bear? I don't think that's real. But the thing is, he is. I mean, I like people who are strong. I mean, strength is something I admire, especially moral courage. And I know a lot of women like men who have a lot of moral courage, and he does. And I know that makes him attractive to a lot of women. Good, definitely. I don't know even. Rihanna says I think she saw him first. Anyway, guys, we're gonna go through this interview now. It's actually 2 hours 7 minutes, which means we may not get through all of it tonight. I mean, I'm not going to go until like 3 in the morning because I will stop it at certain times and make some comments. Okay, so yeah. Hey, Diego Rivera, how are you? Yeah. What's this? DJ says women like immoral men. Well, some do, and they're best avoided. Let the immoral ones have them, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Yeah, life is hard in Russia for most people. Not much different from here. Yeah, I mean, it's before we go any further, I should point out this takes me back to my spies, the spies. Do you remember I did my video about spies? It was going to be part of a series, but it never turned into one. George Blake. Now, George Blake actually died about 2 years ago. After escaping from prison here, he went over the wall at Wormwood Scrubs and eventually found his way to Russia as he was a spy in the Soviet times. And he was living in this lovely little dacha in the woods by a lake. And of course, they live far better than most Russians live in these old flats and things like that. So I mean, he lived far better than most Russians. That guy. He died at the age of, I think he was nearly 100 when he died. Hello, Jeff Hindley. How do you do? Yes, as regards Putin in the Wild West, you need a tough sheriff. I mean, yeah, Pierre Trudeau. Yeah, I mean, Justin Trudeau or Justine Castro, or whatever his name is. Pioneer spirit brings up this is another perfect example when you compare him, what he's done to Canada, for what Putin's done for Russia. I'm not saying Putin's perfect, but anyway, let's hear from the man himself. If I can't get through all this tonight, I'll finish it off maybe another day. All right, I think I'll do the rest of it another day. But anyway, firstly, before I go any further, there's a couple of things notes I've got to do first. Make a note of everything you've got to do first, right? Because I'll forget later on. Notice comments. I've already deleted the notice because there's no confusion. Because what happens is some people, when we want to watch the live stream, they end up hanging. They go to the notice and I have comments underneath saying, "I can't see the live stream." And I said, "You're watching the notice, mate." So I've deleted the notice, but I did copy the comment. Brett Riverboat says, hilarious. BBC, Sky, and ITV saying Tucker asked easy questions and bottled it. Lol, they're jealous. Tucker had an interview and they didn't. Yeah, I mean, it says a lot about Tucker Carlson and Putin for the fact they allowed him, that he did this exclusive with him. And we have Noel Santries laughing. And true, yeah. And Woody Black says here, love Tucker's constantly confused face. Oh, we're going to see all that, aren't we? Right, I'm just going to show you guys something. I put up a poll the other day, and it was 2 days. Was it? No, it was 2 days ago. I put up this poll: will Putin come clean to Tucker about the UFOs? Hashtag UAP Twitter. Hashtag UFO Twitter. I put this poll up on Twitter. Well, here are the results. Let me just show you the results here. There you go, guys. I think that's pretty unanimous, isn't it? 93.3% say no. 6.7 say yes, and that's 15 votes. You can work out how many votes did what, but there you go. So most people are convinced he's not going to come clean on UFOs, and maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. But anyway, I think pretty obvious that it's pretty obvious that is true, because as I said, I've not seen this yet. I've not seen yet this actual interview, but if he'd come clean on UFOs, we'd have heard about it, definitely. Now, what we're going to do, I will play the interview. I'll stop it to interject at certain times. I'll also stop it to answer if I can't answer all your comments because I'm getting so many, but I will answer as many as I can, especially if someone posts one that's interesting. If you post something and I don't, because it's possible I won't see it, you can always repost it again later on and I might see it. Okay, so just bear that in mind. It's not nothing. I'm not ignoring people. It's just that I'm not ignoring anyone. It's simply that I don't. It's just too many. Anyway, here we go. Right, you should be able to see this. Oh no, I need to. Let's just do that. Now you should be able to see this. Give us a shout if you can't. But anyway, so Rihanna says, to be fair, President Putin, Tucker didn't actually ask him about UFOs, didn't he? Well, that's good. That's a disappointment. I mean, I'm now starting this interview with a bit of disappointment already. But let's give him a go anyway. Let's give him a chance. Just post underneath if you can't hear this or see it. Just let me know. You should be able to.
The following is an interview with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shot February 6, 2024 at about 7 p.m. in the building behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview, as you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started.
Oh, send some of that snow over here, will you? I mean, I got all these headlines about snow coming, right? And it's been 12 degrees centigrade and pissing it down with rain for the last 3 days.
What's happening, and most pressingly, how it might end. One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat? And that's your justification. And the answer we got shocked us. Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going.
Hey, Tino, ZXR Alien Warrior. How you doing, mate? Welcome. Good to see you. Tino is here. That's great. That's great. Tino, of course, you've seen him in some of my videos, especially the Larry Warren one in the Rendlesham Forest.
Back to the 8th century. And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption.
DJ B2, snow is for next week. I'll believe it when I see it. Do you remember I'm in southern England and our climate is very different to like Yorkshire, Cumbria, that area.
We concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after
Neil.
2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not.
Hello, Math the Creator.
Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine.
Right. Math the Creator, welcome. Depends on where is it now? I'm not going to show these comments because it just takes me away from the video. Is Carlson a CIA plant working for the White Hat? If he was a CIA plant, he wouldn't be working for the White Hats. But he may be working. He may be working for the White Hats, for example, in the Department of Defense. It's possible there is possibly a secret war going on between the CIA and the DIA. I don't know the specifics, but if you follow the 17th letter of you know what, it talks a lot about that, and as you know, I do take that seriously. Hello, Angela Kenyon. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah.
So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks. And with that, here it is. Mr. President, thank you.
Yeah, Vlad!
On February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country. And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
It's not that America,
No, he's getting live translation, real-time translation through his earpiece and etc. And assuming Tucker is doing the same.
United States was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation?
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable serious talk.
I think, is he kidding or what? I mean, I can't remember what he said anyway. He's quoting him.
Because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
Let's look where
and someone has already told me that he, to the beginning of this interview, he goes a lot into the history of Eastern Europe, going back a long way. And he's written like an article. It's a good 1 hour read. It's a long article. It's a long essay, but he talks about the history of Eastern Europe for the last 1,000 years, and about how that is directly relevant to the situation in Ukraine. And that bloody fool bowler hat man doesn't understand that. Just because he's copying my hairstyle doesn't make him intelligent. So, Bolly, if you're watching this, you're full of shit, mate.
our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from? The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862, when the townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince, Rurik, from Scandinavia to reign. In 1862, Russia celebrated.
Hello, David. Splendid isolation. Yeah. Do you Biden knows the history of America as much as Vlad knows the history of Russia and Ukraine? David, I doubt if Biden knows the history of what happened in the last 24 hours. Yeah.
Celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood. And in Novgorod, there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the country. In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's young son, because Rurik had died by that time, came.
Della's brought up about the British Psychic and Occult Society, Russia. Well, Russia has a really, really rich tradition in the paranormal, ufology. I mean, I'm not going to go into that today because it's too off topic. Well, I don't want this video to be too long. As I said, if it goes on too late, I'll just finish it probably another day. But we'll get through as much of this as we can. But Della, it's very interesting. It really, really is. Yeah. And Leanna says, I doubt if Biden knows the history of what he had for breakfast yet. Hello, Sam Roll, Bro Bottom. He looks healthier than Biden. Almost anyone looks healthier than Biden. And you mentioned there were tribes in. Oh, Della was joking. All right, sorry. I mean, the tribes of. I mean, there were tribes before 800, but it was the beginning of the Tsars and things like that. Anyway, I'll let him carry on.
To Kiev. He ousted two brothers who apparently had once been members of Rurik's squad. So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, the great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity. From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen.
Ukraine has a role in that too,
because
the establishment of the Orthodox Church.
Integrated economic ties.
Hello, Dave Yorkshire. How you doing? Welcome.
one and the same language, and after the baptism of
Well, I'll let you know if I agree with you, because Dave couldn't bear more than 42 minutes of it. But I'll let you know in a minute if I agree with you.
Russia, the same faith and rule of the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape. Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne. But after he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons. The throne was passed not directly from father to eldest son, but from the prince who had passed away to his brother, then to his sons in different lines. All this led to the fragmentation.
Oriana says he's doing it for the benefit of the audience, not Tucker. Yeah, definitely. I think he's well aware, and he's right, that the people in the West have really no clue about the history of Russia and its surrounding states, its relationship to the states that surround it, such as Ukraine, such as Poland, such as all these other countries. And he's educating us. He's educating the people, because all we've heard in the media for the last 3 years is Ukraine good, Russia bad, Zelensky's a wonderful man, and Putin's Hitler. Anyway, I don't want to delay too much.
And the end of Rus as a single state. There was nothing special about it. The same was happening then in Europe. But the fragmented Russian state became an easy prey to the empire created earlier by Genghis Khan. His successors, namely Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part, including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities, simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed to preserve some part of their sovereignty.
Hi, nothing as it seems.
And then a unified Russian state began to take shape with its center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands, including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was even called the Lithuanian-Russian Duchy, because Russians were a significant part of this population.
Could this explain why the false government after Yaroslav was deposed, after the Maidan Revolution, the first thing they did was try and join the EU? That's how the whole Ukraine situation in 2014 kicked off, because they wanted Ukraine in the EU. And so that's interesting what he says about in the old days they were gravitating towards Central Europe.
They spoke the old Russian language and were Orthodox. But then there was a unification, the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland. A few years later, another union was signed, but this time already in the religious sphere. Some of the Orthodox priests became subordinate to the Pope. Thus, these lands became part of the Polish-Lithuanian state. During decades, the Poles were engaged in Polonization of this part of the population. They introduced their language there, trying to entrench the idea.
Polonization, that's what's happening in our country, isn't it? Sorry, a lot of my brother porters are Polish, so I was only joking.
That this population was not exactly Russians, that because they lived on the fringe, they were Ukrainians. Originally, the word Ukrainian meant that the person was living on the outskirts of the state, along the fringes, or was engaged in a border patrol service. It didn't mean any particular ethnic group. So the Poles were trying to, in every possible way, to colonize this part of the Russian lands, and actually treated it rather harshly, not to say cruelly. All that led to the fact that this part of the Russian lands began to struggle for their rights. They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be preserved and people be commissioned here, including to Kiev.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period? I'm losing track of where in history we are. the Polish oppression of Ukraine.
Tucker must have a much smaller earpiece. It's I can't actually see it. It may be flesh-colored and right in his ear.
In the 13th century.
Вот, в 13 веке. Это было в 13 веке. Значит, и
Now I will tell you what happened later.
дальше и назову даты, чтобы не было.
West Londoner.
Give the
Putin eats
dates so
brown
that
bears
there
on
is
toast
no
for breakfast.
confusion.
В 1600,
And in 1654, even a bit earlier,
чуть раньше даже, люди, которые контролировали
the
власть,
people who were in
Dell, I was
control
only
of the
joking, it's
authority
all right.
over that part of the
A lot of my
Russian
brother
lands
Porters are Polish.
присылали к ним направление.
addressed Warsaw, I repeat, demanding that they send them to rulers of Russian origin and Orthodox faith. When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they turned to Moscow, so
Oh,
that
right.
Moscow took them away.
CG Tucker's got subtitles on a teleprompter.
Не думаю,
All
что
right.
это придумал.
That's why
So
he's doing
that
like
you
that.
don't think that I'm inventing things, I'll give you this
Oh,
document.
Della. Okay, Della.
Well,
Cheers.
it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened 2 years ago.
Но все-таки
But still,
документы из архива.
these are documents from the archives, copies.
Здесь письма Богдана
Here are the letters from Bogdan
Receipts.
Khmelnytsky,
контролировал власть в этой
the man who then controlled the power in this part of the Russian lands
в Варшаву.
that is now
I'll have a
called
look,
Ukraine.
actually. The symbol
He
is on
wrote to
Tucker's
Warsaw
tie.
demanding that their rights be upheld,
С просьбой взять их.
and after being refused, he began to write letters to Moscow, asking to take them under the strong hand of the Moscow Tsar. There are copies of these documents. I will leave them for your good
Hello,
memory.
Vrillon. Putin
There is
seems
a
more of a
translation
statesman than
into
anyone. That's
Russian.
damn
You
right.
can translate it
It's
into
just
English
yellow and
later.
black stripes.
Russia would not agree to admit
does that
them
mean,
straight
Hachi?
away, assuming that the war with Poland would start. Nevertheless, in 1654, the Pan-Russian Assembly
Hello.
of top clergy and landowners
We got proselytizing Orthodox Pentecostal Angora rabbit. Long time no see. Thanks for coming out of your warren and smelling the fresh air. Hello, Ben Kremlin Jones.
headed by the Tsar,
Часть древнерусских земель.
Oh,
which was the representative
Pioneer Spirit says yellow and black are the colours of anarcho-capitalism. Yeah, like in the Gadsden flag. Is that what you meant, Hachi? Is it actually an anarcho-capitalist symbol? I wonder. Well, seeing as Putin is, making deals with India and buying gold, and he's got things like that, and buying crypto, maybe. Yeah, that's one of the things I admire about him. He's sticking it up to the World Bank.
body of the power of the old Russian state, decided to include a part of the old Russian lands into Moscow Kingdom.
Перемирие было заключено.
As expected, the war with Poland began. It lasted 13 years, and then in 1654,
По-моему, 2
a
года
truce was concluded.
мир с Польшей. Вечный мир, как это было.
And 32 years later, I think, a peace treaty with
Black and
Poland,
yellow,
which
that's
they
it,
called
Hachi.
Eternal Peace, was signed.
Yeah. Oh, that's Rhiannon, yeah.
And these lands, the whole left bank of Dnieper, including Kiev, went to Russia.
Затем, во времена
And the whole right bank of Dnieper remained in Poland.
Вернули все исторические земли.
Under the rule of Catherine the Great, Russia reclaimed all of its historical lands, including in the south and west.
Да, а вот
This all lasted until the revolution.
воспользовавшись
Before World War I,
организацией,
Rabbit, no.
Austrian general staff relied on the
Putin
ideas
is
of
giving you the background.
Ukrainianization and started actively promoting the ideas of Ukraine and the Ukrainianization.
Della, Steve Mumbling called me that.
конечно,
Ben Kremlin
было
Jones.
стремление ослабить потенциал.
Their motive was obvious. Just before World War I, they wanted to
Yeah, I
weaken
think
the
Tucker needs a
potential
toilet break,
enemy
doesn't he?
and secure themselves favorable conditions in the border area. So the idea which had emerged in Poland that people residing in that territory were allegedly
Johnny,
not really
yeah,
Russians,
The
but
tie looks
rather
like a bit of
belonged
a
to a
kipper.
special ethnic group,
You
Ukrainians,
can imagine like
started
Freddie the
being
Dreamer's
propagated
wearing
by
it,
the
you know.
Austrian general staff.
которые говорили необходимо.
As far back as the 19th century,
It's not
theorists
irrelevant,
calling
Rabbit.
for
You'll
Ukrainian
see.
independence appeared.
Украинской независимости говорили.
All those, however, claimed that Ukraine should have a very good relationship with Russia.
Настаивали. Ну вот,
Sounds
insisted
Hello,
on
Sam.
that.
You're playing chess. Nice one. That is very Russian, like you
After
say.
the 1917 revolution,
старались восстановить государственность.
The Bolsheviks sought to restore the statehood, and the civil war began, including the hostilities with Poland. In 1921, peace with Poland was proclaimed, and under that treaty, the right bank of Dnieper River once again was given back to Poland.
But that's because Lenin he just basically gave everything away. He gave away like about a third of the Western Russian territory just to end the war.
In 1939,
Hello,
after
Roy Bland,
Poland
hello.
cooperated with Hitler, it did collaborate.
Roy's got
with
taken a
Hitler,
very dim view of this.
Hitler offered Poland peace and a treaty of friendship, an alliance demanding in
Jeff,
return that Poland
show a
give
serious
back to Germany the
course, always
so-called
serious.
Danzig corridor, which
know me,
connected
I'm
the
Mr.
bulk
Serious.
of Germany with East Prussia and Königsberg.
Dennis, I feel like playing a naughty student and horny history teacher.
After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig,
Villon,
the city
Trevor.
of Dansk emerged.
Pioneer spirit. He'll tell you all about Canada and the
Hitler
Nazis.
asked them to give it
Yeah.
amicably, but they refused.
Of course.
Still, they collaborated with Hitler and
yeah, man.
engaged
Go on,
together
cold shower girl.
in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia.
But may I ask you, you're making the case that
Rabbit.
Ukraine, certainly parts.
The Nazis and the Soviet Union signed a pact in 1939, which they very quickly broke after Germany invaded. It's a long story,
Eastern Ukraine is in effect
probably
Russia
involved
has
that.
been for hundreds of years. Why wouldn't you just take it when you became president 24 years ago? You have nuclear weapons, they don't. If it's actually your land, why did you wait so long?
Sure.
Roy, this is a live stream, okay? I can't read every comment in detail. All right. Sorry.
I'll tell you. I'm coming to that. This briefing is coming to an end. It might be boring, but it
It's not
explains
boring.
many
I
things.
just don't know how it's relevant.
Good. Good. I'm so gratified that you appreciate that. Thank you. So, before World War II, Poland collaborated with Hitler, and although it did not yield to Hitler's demands, it still
Hello,
participated
Gary Robinson,
in the partitioning
welcome.
of Czechoslovakia together with Hitler, as the Poles had not given the
Roy Bland, don't worry, Roy Bland, I will come back to the point you made. All right, but I don't have time right now.
Danzig corridor to Germany, it went too far, pushing Hitler to
No worries,
start
Gary.
World War II by attacking them. Why was it Poland against whom the war started on 1st September 1939? Poland turned out to be uncompromising, and Hitler had nothing to do but start implementing his plans with Poland. By the way, the USSR, I have read some archive documents, behaved very honestly. It asked Poland.
All right, Roy, let's just see what you have to say. Okay, here we go. Putin is off his nuts on steroids and knows nothing about history. He goes on to claim Zelensky's father fought the Nazis in the war. Alexander Zelensky was born in 1947. All right, fair enough if you got that bit wrong. But there is a Nazi correct connection to Ukraine, and indeed some people even called Putin's attempt to liberate Ukraine as the last battle of World War II. And look at what Trudeau did. Trudeau was actually invited one of these people to Parliament, an old member of the Azov Battalion. Trevor and I talked about it on Third Rail Radio. Check out his channel.
Poland's permission to transit its troops through the Polish territory to help Czechoslovakia. But the then Polish foreign minister said that if the Soviet planes flew over Poland, they would be downed over the territory of Poland. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that the war began, and Poland fell prey to the policies it had pursued against Czechoslovakia, as under the well-known Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
Yeah.
Part of the territory,
That's right,
including
Maria.
Western Ukraine, was to be given to Russia.
Green tea. Trudeau gave Nazi a standing ovation. Yeah, and he hoped no one would spot it. Check out the Third Rail Radio show I did with Trevor on that. And as David said, Nazis continue to mince about in Ukraine to this day, both government and military. Yeah.
Thus, Russia, which was then named the USSR, regained its historical lands. After the victory in the Great Patriotic War, as we call World War II, all those territories were ultimately enshrined as belonging to Russia, to the
Operation
USSR.
Paperclip, hatchy, yeah.
As for Poland,
It makes
it
a mockery of
received
the official history
apparently
of
in
World War II.
compensation the lands which had originally been German. The eastern parts of Germany, these are now western lands of Poland. Of course, Poland regained access to the Baltic Sea and Danzig, which was once again given its Polish name.
West Londoner.
So this was how this situation developed.
Sam, all wars are
In
bankers' wars.
1922, when the USSR was being established,
Sam, it's a good point. As I said in the Israel disaster, the war in Israel live stream, if you just cut foreign aid to both sides in that war, I bet they come to a peace deal pretty quickly. The foreign aid that's going to both Israel and to the Palestinian Authority, in various levels of legality, you just do something about that. It wouldn't take long for them to find a solution.
the Bolsheviks started building the USSR and established the Soviet Ukraine, which had never existed before.
Right.
He's just made a joke.
Stalin insisted that those republics be included in the USSR as autonomous entities.
Sam's made a good point there, yeah. War is a massacre of people who don't know each other for the profit of people who know each other, but don't massacre each other. Yeah, who collaborate behind the scenes, I would add. But that's true, Sam.
For some inexplicable reason, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, insisted that they be entitled to withdraw from the USSR. And again, for some unknown reasons, he transferred to that newly established Soviet Republic of Ukraine some of the lands together with people living there, even though those lands had never been called Ukraine, and yet they were made part of that Soviet Republic of Ukraine. Those lands included the Black Sea region, which was received under Catherine the Great, and which had no historical connection with Ukraine whatsoever. Even if we go as far back as 1654, when these lands returned to Russian Empire, that territory was the size of 3 to 4 regions of modern Ukraine, with no Black Sea region. That was completely out of the question.
In 1654.
Exactly.
You obviously have encyclopedic knowledge of this region, but why didn't you make this case for the first 22 years as president that Ukraine wasn't a real country?
Well, I mean, I made something like this point with when I was debating Bowler Hat Man, is that the only reason Crimea ended up in Ukraine was it was rubber stamped under Khrushchev. When in those days it was all part of the USSR, and these regions didn't have any autonomy anyway, so it really made no difference.
Да. Итак, значит, советская Украина получила.
The Soviet Union was given a great deal of territory that had never belonged to it, including the Black Sea region. At some point, when Russia received them as an outcome of the Russo...
West Londoners made another good point about war. Young men die fighting each other instead of their real enemies back home in their capitals. Yeah.
Turkish wars, they were called New Russia or Novorossiya. But that does not matter. What matters is that Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, established Ukraine that way. For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as...
Rabbit, I know that Crimea was in the Ottoman Empire, and indeed it's actually changed hands several times for its history, and there's several different languages spoken there. I said this to Bowler Hatman. Bowler Hatman didn't even know that there was such a thing as Crimean Tatar was the native language.
It's part of the USSR.
Nice lives matter, yeah. No Rusky ever called me a white male bigot. Yeah. Paraphrasing Muhammad Ali. Exactly. I actually created a meme. The meme I showed you. I'll find it because it's very important. This meme. I don't want to waste too much time, but I posted this. If I can, I don't want to waste too much time, but no, it doesn't matter. I'll find it at some point. But it just basically says it's got a boxing glove and it says no Russian ever called me a racist, which is like Muhammad Ali said that no Vietnamese ever called me a rude word for a black person, which you can't say on YouTube.
And for unknown reasons, again, the Bolsheviks were engaged in Ukrainianization. It was not merely because the Soviet leadership was composed to a great extent of those originating from
DJ Butu Tatar is a language group. It's got nothing. I don't think it's got anything to do with Tartaria. That's something different.
Ukraine. Rather, it was explained by the general policy of indigenization pursued by the Soviet Union. Same things were done in other Soviet republics. This involved promoting national languages and national cultures, which is not a bad in principle. That is how the Soviet Ukraine was created. After the World War II, Ukraine received, in addition to the lands that had belonged to Poland before the war, part of the lands that had previously belonged to Hungary and Romania. So Romania and Hungary had some of their lands taken away and given to the Soviet Ukraine, and they still remain part of Ukraine. So in this sense, we have every reason to affirm that Ukraine is an artificial state that was shaped at Stalin's will.
Do you believe Hungary has a right to take its land back from Ukraine, and that other nations have a right to go back to their 1654 borders?
Well, that's a good question, and there's this sort of idea that somehow you can undo and unpick every single thing that's ever happened in history that you don't like. This is why you get these idiots in Scotland and Wales who talk about like saying that English aren't real British people because they're Anglo-Saxons and this other nonsense. Even if that were true, which is not, the Anglo-Saxons were not actually a people. They were not actually an influx and immigration of people. They were actually indigenous people who adopted a new language and culture. You can't just people. You get these people who say things like, "Oh, all the white people should leave America and leave it for the Amerindians." And if you went back through time, just untangling this complex, knot, this tangle of timelines, and all the who did what to who, the injustices and the justices, you can't. You can't. So, you can't just say, well, maybe Hungary's entitled to a bit of Ukraine. It's far more complicated than that.
I'm not sure whether they should go back to the 1654 borders. But given Stalin's time, so-called Stalin's regime, which as many claim...
Roy Bland says Putin invaded Ukraine and caused the death of thousands of young conscripts. No, Putin he has actually liberated Ukraine. It was the globalists under the Zelensky regime that caused the death of those conscripts. And it actually includes the soldiers on the other side as well.
Saw numerous violations of human rights and violations of the rights of other states.
В этом смысле, конечно, вполне можно, если не говорить о том, что они имеют на это право.
One may say that they could claim back those lands of theirs while having no right to do that. It is at least understandable.
Have you told Viktor Orban that he can have part of Ukraine?
Никогда не говорил.
Never. I have never told him, not a single time.
У нас с ним даже на этот счет не было никаких разговоров.
We have not even had any conversation on that, but I actually know for sure that Hungarians who live there
Они, конечно, хотят вернуться на свои территории.
wanted to get back to their historical land.
Интересную историю. Отвлекусь.
Moreover, I would like to share a very interesting story with you.
I think he's probably going to make this point, but the modern borders of various countries. He's going to talk about the fall of the Soviet Union, how it was handled badly. Now, contrary to popular belief, Putin is not a Soviet revivalist. He's actually he's more of a sort of nationalist conservative than a communist. but he just said that people. He said very poignantly in his articles that everyone just woke up one morning finding themselves in a foreign country. And it's interesting. He'll probably explain. I'm sort of putting words in his mouth and getting ahead of him.
I digress. It's a personal one. Somewhere in the early 80s, I went on a road trip in a car from then Leningrad across the Soviet Union through Kiev. Made a stop in Kiev and then went to western Ukraine. I went to the town of Beregovoye, and all the names of towns and villages there were in Russian and in a language I did not understand, in Hungarian, in Russian and in Hungarian, not in Ukrainian, in Russian and in Hungarian. I was driving through some kind of village and there were men sitting next to the houses and they were wearing black three-piece suits and black cylinder hats. I asked, are they some kind of entertainers?
Back soon. Okay.
I was told, no, they were not entertainers, they're Hungarians. I said, what are they doing here? What do you mean? This is their land, they live here. This was during the Soviet time in the 1980s. They preserved the Hungarian language, Hungarian names, and all their national costumes. They are Hungarians and they...
You see, you can say the same for... Hello, Snarnock. This is the same with Romania. I know this because I researched... I actually interviewed a guy called Dan Farkas, who was a ufologist from Romania. And he said the same thing, because there's this church in Romania where there's like a UFO, really an old painting of a UFO. And he says you can time that very precisely. You know, he says you can date that picture very precisely because the text underneath it is in German. And he says this area was actually a German-speaking area for a while. Before that, it was Hungarian, and then eventually it became a Romanian-speaking area. But these. You've got to realize people change languages. They don't necessarily. People will change languages. Entire communities and nations will change languages without changing the racial makeup of the people. This includes some of their traditions. So, what are you going to do? How? This is not something a unique problem that Russia has. A lot of countries have it.
Feel themselves to be Hungarians. And of course, when now there is an infringement.
Well, that is, and there's a lot of that. Though I think many nations are upset about Transylvania as well, as you obviously know. But
is he reading my mind? He's just said the same thing I have.
Many nations feel frustrated by the redrawn borders of the wars of the 20th century and wars going back 1,000 years, the ones that you mentioned. But the fact is that you didn't make this case in public until
can you hear my voice on my
February. And in the case that you made, which I read today, you explain at great length that you felt a physical threat from the West in NATO, including potentially a nuclear threat, and that's what got you to move. Is that a fair characterization of what you said?
I understand that my long speeches probably fall outside of the genre of the interview. That is why I asked you at the beginning, are we going to have a serious talk or a show? You said a serious talk, so bear with me, please. We're coming to the point where the Soviet Ukraine was established. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and everything that Russia had generously bestowed on Ukraine was dragged away by the latter. I'm coming to a very important point of today's agenda.
Thank you.
After all, the collapse of the Soviet Union was effectively initiated by the Russian leadership. I do not understand what the Russian leadership was guided by at the time, but I suspect there were several reasons to think everything would be fine. First, I think that then Russian leadership believed that the fundamentals of the relationship between Russia and Ukraine were, in fact, a common language. More than 90% of the population.
Hello, Jimmy. No, not yet.
Russian.
The Holodomor. He hasn't mentioned the Holodomor. This was basically a famine in Ukraine and Western Russia in 1931. Yeah. There's a film called Mr. Jones about a Welsh journalist who goes there.
Family ties. Every third person there had some kind of family or friendship ties. Common culture, common history, Finally, common faith, coexistence with a single state for centuries, and deeply interconnected economies.
I must remember to put my mic down when I'm
All
speaking.
these elements together make our good relationships inevitable. The second point is a very important one. I want you, as an
Tucker's hair,
American
yeah.
citizen, and your viewers to hear about this as well. The former Russian leadership assumed that the Soviet Union had ceased to exist, and therefore there were no longer any ideological dividing lines. Russia even agreed voluntarily and proactively to the collapse of the Soviet Union, and believed that this would be understood by the so-called civilized West as an invitation for cooperation and association. That is what Russia was expecting, both from the United States and the so-called collective West as a whole. There were smart people, including in Germany, Egon Bahr, a major politician of the Social Democratic Party, who insisted in his personal conversations with the Soviet leadership on the brink of the
No,
collapse
Fouquet,
of
I'm
the
not
Soviet
cracking up.
Union, that a new security system should be established in Europe. Help should be given to unify Germany, but a new system should be also established to include the United States, Canada, Russia, and other Central European countries.
Yes.
But NATO needs not to expand. That's what he said.
Exactly.
If NATO expands, everything would be just the same as during the Cold War, only closer to Russia's borders. That's all.
Why does NATO even exist
He was a
today?
wise old man, but no one listened to him. In fact, he got angry once. If, he said, you don't listen to me, I'm never setting my foot in Moscow once again. Everything happened just as he had said.
Well, of course, it did come true, and you've mentioned this many times. I think it's a fair point, and many in America thought that relations between Russia and the United States would be fine with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. That the opposite happened, but you've never explained.
Yeah, that's
why
because
you think that.
That's because the globalists tried to turn Russia into another sort of Western-style democracy, complete with like corrupt politicians and sweatshops for the big corporations. That's what they hoped for. The whole project, the whole early project for the new American century was talking about that. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, they thought, well, let's just turn Russia into another Germany. And they got Yeltsin in there, who was sort of like some drunk old git who would just go along with it. The 1990s were a terrible time for Russia. That film I talked about previously, Trans-Siberian, is set in the 90s in Russia. The one with Ben Kingsley. You know, before we were living in the dark, but now we are dying in the light. But then Putin came along. Putin was not their guy. They didn't want this guy to become president. He's totally and utterly changed. He's totally and utterly changed everything. Westland, let's just stream down. What's the matter? Oh dear, it seems to be still working here. Yeah, it seems to be working here. Stream unavailable. Oh no. Oh god.